control. Does it fare better, though, against something like Abzan aggro?
I think the less removal spell something like Red Black Dragons is playing against, the better. There's also fewer lockout cards like Elspeth. There's, less Corsair Krufix grinding in an advantage. I think Red Black Dragons is a little bit better situated in this kind of matchup than it is against Abzan control.
All right, we'll see that. We're underway. Eric Smith starts out with Forest Hill Pass. Now, an advantage to Red Black Dragons is it actually gets a clean answer to Hangerback Walker, and then it gets to play 3 copies of Magma Spray in the deck.
Yeah, and Kolaghan's command isn't exactly a clean answer, but it's a pretty efficient answer.
Yeah, they do get the Thopters, but you get additional value as well off the artifact creature. Matthew will be the first play. It'll be a Thoughtseize to take a look at Eric's hand. Does appear Erik was on a mulligan to 6, so he has lands 2, 3, 4 in hand, along with a Fleece's Line and an Abzan Charm.
And I really appreciate that this Red Black Dragon deck has cleaned up the mana base quite a bit. As opposed to Mardu Dragon list that we saw over the previous couple of months, Crackling Doom does not seem like a great card in Standard right now because of Hangerback Walker. And the upside is you get much better mana, no copies of Nomad Outpost, fewer lands that come into play tapped, and fewer 3-color demands on your mana.
Yeah, I mean, Red Black Dragons, I feel it was a deck where it had very powerful removal, but its creature base was shaky. When you look at Matthew's creature base, the fact that he now gets to play 4 Hangerback Walkers just as a colorless 2-drop may have shored up some of that weakness.
Absolutely.
Lands out from Eric's. He plays players trade lands up until 3. We know that the only non-land spell in Eric's hand is an Abzan Charm, so forcing him into a bit of a control role. It'll be Matthew with the first creature that's going to be a Hangerback Walker on 1. And here's a draw 2 from Erik. So that'll undo the damage done by a mulligan.
And I think that's one of the big influences of Hangerback Walker on the format is people are cleaning up their mana bases. Because instead of having to play a pure 3-color deck to get enough power in your deck, you can play a 2-color deck like Red Black Dragons, or Abzan Aggro has really become a 2.5-color deck instead of a 3-color deck like it was before. And Hangerback Walker allows it to cut Rakshasa Death Dealer and really clean up the mana base.
And yeah, absolutely. So going back to Matthew, he's going to go ahead and Temple here. And now there's a bit of a value question as to, I mean, I think he'll pump Hangerback to 2, but especially in this kind of grindy affair, what is that? There's a sweet spot number where Hangerback stops pumping and starts attacking.
So early on in the game, you want to keep the Hangerback around 2 because of Abzan Charm. Once you go up to 3, it gets exiled, and that's really bad. Later on in the game, your opponent may have just cast all their removal spells, and then there's more of an incentive to keep growing. So early on, I think Matthew's not really going to push past 2 counters unless there's a very strong incentive to do so.
Well, a trade game happened there. Matthew went for a Goblin Rabblemaster. Eric Smith, Hero's Downfall before combat. Matthew's land was a Temple, so he hit in for 1 with Hangerback Walker. So now we go back over to Erik. Right now, players even on cards, thanks to that Abzan Charm. And just trading without too much life total change. Feels like this one could go either way.
Yeah, and Eric's list, as opposed to the one that we saw Todd Ederson beat BBD with last round, Eric's is much more in BBD's camp of he can situate himself to play the control game. He's got 4 copies of Den Protector, a lot of removal on the list. So even though Eric's the aggro deck and his board's empty right now, this is not necessarily a bad position for him.
Yeah, that Den Protector chain you're talking about, it seems really well positioned against a all removals deck like Red Black.
Yep. So that's why Matthew does have to keep up the pressure here, even though he's got Hangerback Walker and a lot of removal spells in his own deck.
Yeah. Matthew's going to try another Rabblemaster. This one's going to succeed. It'll attack alongside Hangerback Walker. And Matthew really becoming the aggro deck. Here's a copy of Timurit the Murder King. It's a 1 of in his list.
Yeah, 1 copy in the list. Really good synergies with Hangerback Walker and Goblin Rabblemaster.
Yeah, allows you to sacrifice, and this is pretty interesting. Even when Timurit is in the graveyard, you can sack your Hangerback Walker at will to get Timurit back, and mainly to create Thopters, and then you can sacrifice the Thopters to deal 2 damage.
Right, only 1 copy in the list. The deck really isn't built around it, but it's a 2-drop for a deck that's in the market for aggressive plays, and in late game scenarios, especially with Hangerback Walker, can be really, really potent.
And the damage it's dealing is pretty relevant. He has Eric Smith down to 13. For Erik, he now has 6 lands in play. He's going to need to find an answer to Goblin Rabblemaster very quickly, I would think, to prevent himself getting burned out by Timurit.
Yeah, and his answers right now are a little bit on the clunky side. He can set up Den Protector to get a removal spell back, but that takes several turns to enable, and Goblin Rabblemaster does not give you several turns, especially when Timurit's in the equation, and Erik's at risk of getting burned out.
All right, so Erik's play is going to be a Hangerback Walker on 2. That's big enough to trade with Goblin Rabblemaster, provided Matthew allows it.
And Erik may have to just use Dramoka's command here to fight down Timurit or Goblin Rabblemaster.
All right, and that's what he'll do. Dromoka's Command pushes Hanger back to a 3/3 and fights down Rabblemaster.
Yeah, not a lot of incentive for Eric rather, to go after Temerit in that spot because Matthew can simply get it back. But as much as you would like to get tricky with Dromoka's Command, I think Erik needed to make sure that Dromoka's Command successfully resolved because he needed to get Rabblemaster off the table.
It's a tight turn there for Erik, but unless Matthew has a response, it looks like Erik may have stabilized on the board.
Well, he's still got to deal with the long-term implications of Temerit backed by Hangerback Walker. Erik can get burned out even with from a 13 life and a pretty stable base on the board. Matthew can still wear him out with Temerit.
Yeah, and that's the danger of this red-black deck. If you try to kill spell them out of the game, there's a lot of incidental damage that you can take.
Yeah, Thunderbreak Region, as you see, well, this is going to be at least 3 points of damage. Temerit's going to be some points. The Haven can get back the Thunderbreak Region. So even at 13, with the ground locked up, Erik's life total is not safe.
So Matthew plays the dragon land to go with it, passes back to Erik. Now pressure is on Erik to have some way to clean this up. He may have the removal necessary to get out of the situation, but the danger will be what will his life total be at once he's taken care of these creatures. It's a face-down creature from Erik. Means it is Den Protector. 2 mana up. If you look at his graveyard, this means he does have the potential to play Dromoka's Command and flip Den Protector this turn. Also, he has cards like Abzan Charm. He could get those back. It would have to be next turn for him to cast them.
But individual pieces of removal here that don't exile are only going to do so much in the long term against Matthew's combination of Hangerback Walker and Temerit.
Yeah.
Killing stuff is fine, and Erik does need to answer the board, but this is a short-term solution to what's happening.
Yeah. Interesting cat and mouse here going whether or not with Matthew leaving up 2 mana for Temerit, at the same time leaving up a mana for Hangerback Walker. See, Erik's going to flip Den Protector to get back. Well, we'll see what he's targeting. Looks like it's Dromoka's Command. Maybe Matthew will want to use his mana in response to this.
I could see him activating Hangerback Walker right now. You want to make sure if that thing dies, you're getting the maximum number of Thopters. If you allow Erik to pick up the Dromoka's Command and say go, he may fight the Hangerback Walker in response.
And it looks like Erik's going to go ahead and use Dromoka's Command on his Hangerback to give it a 1/1 counter and have it fight the Temerit. And I do like that synergy where putting a 1/1 counter on Hangerback adds toward his passive ability.
Yeah, it's not the reason that any of these cards are in the deck, but Hangerback Walker alongside Dromoka's Command and Afenza, these little synergies come up.
So Temerit will get fought down by the robot. Erik had to go to 12 there to make that play using a Pain Land. Here's an attack from Thunderbreak Regent. Erik will drop to 8. Certainly with Temerit and the creatures in play, there exists 8 points of burn for Matthew, which means that Erik will have to get damage of his own fairly quickly.
Yeah, and a line of play that Matthew has available to him now if he wants it is he can put a counter on the Hangerback Walker, sacrifice it to Temerit to bring it back, cast it, have a Sea of Thopters alongside Thunderbreak Regent, with Erik having no defense in the air and only 8 points of life. This is a really good setup.
Looks like that might be what he's doing. Here's a tap to put a counter on Hangerback Walker. 2 more. That's going to use Temerit's second ability. So Matthew will sacrifice Hangerback Walker to return Temerit to his hand. Sacrifice of Hangerback Walker will net Matthew 3 Thopters. And now this is the burnout play we were talking about.
Yeah, you can see that the one Temerit in the list looks fairly innocuous, but you get into spots like this where the game's dragged out and it's not clear Erik can work around this setup in the long term.
Yeah, able to cast that there thanks to Urborg. Haven makes black mana.
Urborg remaining the bane of all commentators and players.
But this does mean Matthew represents lethal this next turn. He has 1 sacrifice up here. He has 3 red mana, so he can use that first ability on Temerit to sacrifice a creature to deal 2 damage 3 times next turn. So that's the full 8 damage.
Erik cannot get out of this spot with non-exiling removal because Temera keeps coming back. His removal spells either put Temera in the graveyard, or they can't target it because Abzan Charm can't touch Temera. This is just a weird hole in the armor for Erik's deck, but it is manifesting right now.
Yeah, and that's not even to mention the 4 damage that could come off Thunderbreak Regent. So what happened here is Erik attacked with both creatures. Looks like Matthew just took the damage off it.
I think he chumped the Hangerback Walker and shot Erik.
So Erik down to 6. And here's an untap. The only life gain spell from Erik is Siege Rhino. Now, Dromoka's Command can prevent damage from burn spells.
And any effort to answer the Thunderbreak region is going to require 3 points of damage here.
Yeah, this first ability in Dromoka's Command won't save him from Temera's abilities, though.
Yep.
Here's Den Protector. It's going to get back Dromoka's Command. Dromoka's Command will put a counter on Hangerback Walker and have it fight Thunderbreak Regent.
So the goal here is for Thunderbreak Regent to trade with the Hangerback Walker, giving Erik a sea of blockers. But I think that if Matthew simply remembers the triggers here, there's nothing for Erik to do.
That's what it is. He doesn't want those blockers to happen. He'll go ahead and was going to sacrifice the Thunderbreak in response, and that's enough. Game 1 over to Matthew Long.
Yeah, I mean, what a weird game. I've rarely seen an Abzan aggro deck get that much value going and lose the game to just kind of a random smattering of creatures. But the one Temera in Matthew's deck was just something Erik could not answer in the long term. Erik couldn't apply enough pressure, and Matthew slowly but surely ground him down.
Yeah, this red-black versus Abzan dynamic's very interesting. Abzan is really wanting to trade and gain value, and I think it can do that against the red-black deck. What the red-black strategy is it's allowing itself to go down on card advantage, but saying every time it wants Abzan to pay a tax. Say every time we trade, I want you to take between 2 and 4 damage, and with enough help, maybe that will be all your life points.
Right.
Going to the sideboard, though, let's start with Erik Smith. He is down a game. I would assume he's going to take an even more controlling route if he has one.
Well, he's got 2 copies of Elspeth Sun's Champion, 2 Self-Inflicted Wound, 2 Herald of Torment, 3 Tragic Arrogance, 3 Thoughtseize, 2 Duress, 1 Ultimate Price. Besides the 1 copy of Ultimate Price being a very good answer to the dragons in the list, there isn't a lot here that screams at me that it's absolutely going to be coming in, but there's a couple of options. I think Elspeth, Duress, Thoughtseize, and Tragic Arrogance are all reasonable answers, or reasonable methods rather, of trying to slow the game down and giving Erik more time to leverage his resource advantage and to break up Matthew's synergies. None of these cards strike me as being superstars in the matchup, though, so I don't know how heavy Erik's going to sideboard.
All right, going to Matthew's side, we'll go through his sideboard. He has Murderous Cut, Crux of Fate, Ugin the Spirit Dragon, 3 Anger of the Gods, 3 Self-Inflicted Wound. That seems pretty relevant here. A Perforos, 2 Outpost Siege, 2 Read the Bones, and a Duress. So he actually has a lot of card advantage.
Yeah, he can go really, really long in this matchup if he wants to. Now, I don't know if he wants to go to things like Perforos and Outpost Siege because of Dromoka's Command in Erik's deck, but at the minimum, he can bring in Self-Inflicted Wound, and if he really wants to go into a very controlling package, Anger of the Gods, Ugin, Crux of Fate, and Murderous Cut are all really good options as well. If he goes down that far, maybe even something like Read the Bones comes in, but that's a fairly extreme measure. But Matthew has a lot of options here to calibrate his deck. He can be very, very controlling, or he can be a little bit more controlling, but basically keep his Game 1 deck intact.
Yeah, and I like Self-Inflicted Wound. I mean, it's great against Abzan in most decks, but I really like it out of Matthew's deck because of its ability to do that trade and tax strategy again. You know, it kills a creature. Oh, and by the way, Erik takes 2.
Yeah, and you have threats like Stormbreath Dragon and Thunderbreak Regent that are all part of the same process. You know, if any of those threats go uncontested, that's really, really good. But if they just trade with spells, at least, you know, Stormbreath Dragon's hitting once, Thunderbreak Regent's getting a trigger on the way out, and as you mentioned, those little nickel and dime shots all add up if Erik's not getting life. And really his only way to gain life in the matchup is 4 copies of Siege Rhino and Wingmate Rock in a couple specific spots.
The players getting ready for Game 2. Erik Smith is currently our leader. We're going to talk a little about invitational qualifiers. How do you get to our next invitational? That has to do with the Star City Games IQs happening around the country. Showing up, first of all, the winners get an invitation good for the next year to one of our Star City Invitationals. We have one in each area of the country. Also, you get exclusive prizes, the invitational qualification. To that, you get a playmat, a top 8 pin. You get tokens from the invitational winner from the most recent invitational. That's Jacob Wilson's Monk tokens from season 2. Now, we might get some more of these after this invitational. Also, you get vouchers for Star City Games Premium, all for attending and placing well at the Star City Games IQs.
Yeah, a great path to the invitational. For some of our players who are pursuing buys for Open Series events or trying to get to the Players' Championship, the IQs are definitely helping them there. And if you're just looking for more local play at your store, well, it comes with a bunch of prizes as well. So no matter what your goals are, the IQ is a great program to bring to your local store.
Erik Smith, one of those players, when he had his invitational victory not so long ago, IQ'd his way to the invitational and really took it by storm.
Yes. And now, looks like locked up a great performance here in Legacy with Esper Deathblade. Went 7-1, I believe, through the Legacy rounds. And obviously having a very good run in Standard as well, as he is undefeated thus far.
Yeah, and we'll get more. We actually do have our Legacy results, so we'll get to that in a bit here. Esper Deathblade, I think, definitely the surprise deck. Not just once in the 7-1 decks, but twice.
Yep. Very good performance for Esper Deathblade. Very good performance for Grixis as well. Control and Delver.
All right, back on to game 2. Erik Smith will be on the play against Matthew Long. Remember, this 13th win, if Erik wins this round, that will lock him for the top 8. Sole possession of first place in the tournament with 3 rounds to go. And for game 2, he'll be starting on Fleecemane Lion. Matthew with a lot more clean removal post board, even at 2. Self-inflicted wound, Draconic Roar. These cards all take care of a Fleecemane Lion.
To me, what seems interesting about this matchup, it feels like one of those matchups, and there's a couple of these in Standard, where who's the aggro and who's the control role is very fluid. You know, Erik was trying to play the control role last game because of the way that his cards lined up and the pressure that Matthew was putting him under. And this game, being on the play with a turn 2 Fleecemane Lion, he might be the aggressor. It just depends on what cards each player is drawing.
Yeah, by and large, you're right. It does. I mean, if you're just looking at things from card economy, it feels like the Obzon player is more often than not the control deck. But you just have to watch that life total when these games play out.
Yeah. Matthew is going to pick up a lot of incidental damage over the course of the game. Thunderbreak Region, Stormbreath Dragon, Self-Inflicted Wound. If the Temerit shows up, we saw what that was able to do in the first game.
Here's a swing from Fleecemane Lion. Matthew goes down to 17. His turn 2 play was not a kill spell, but it was rather a hangerback walker. And next play is a second Fleecemane Lion. He'll pass. No copies of BioBlight in Matthew's list, so Erik is not in risk of getting 2-for-1s here.
Yeah, that was the first thing I was looking for.
Yeah. So boy, those are
quick
two
glance,
3-3s.
Quick glance at the deck list, and no copies of BioBlight. Okay.
It's interesting. It's a very efficient removal spell, but at the same time, Matthew's plan of trading and dealing incidental damage, I think favors cards like Draconic Roar and Self-Inflicted Wound over the 2-mana BioBlight.
For sure.
Even Kolaghan's Command plays into that fairly well.
Yep. Get back a haste threat, deal 2 to your opponent in some spots. Yeah, the Red-Black Dragons deck definitely accrues little pieces of damage along the way.
Well, it looks like some mirrored 2-drops here. Just as Erik had a second Fleecemane on 3, Matthew had a second Hangerback Walker. Now, right now, that means we have 1-1s facing off against 3-3s, but Matthew's Hangerback Walkers will start growing.
Yep.
So we go over to Thoughtseize from Erik. We see Matthew's remaining hand. It's 2 Stormbreath Dragons, a Kolaghan's Command, and 2 more lands. Now, of note, both those lands come into play tapped, so Stormbreath is happening on turn 6, not 5, as it stands.
Yes. But this is not a great hand for Erik to see, because Matthew is shaping up to have a very powerful, long game here. He's got multiple temples to fix his draw steps, 2 Hangerback Walkers already in play that are at risk of locking up the ground here, and a removal spell.
So looks like Erik takes the removal spell. He'll leave Matthew with lands and dragons. Puts some pressure on Erik to have a fast start. Now, one thing Erik does have is he has a copy of Wingmate Rock in his hand.
Although that lines up poorly, potentially, against the Stormbreath Dragon that Matthew has left over.
A swing for 6 from Erik Smith. At some point, Matthew may have to start chumping, and he's going to do that right now. Puts the turn 2 hanger back in front of 1 line, pumps it up to 2. It'll die. Matthew gets a Thopter. Now, was there any consideration there for Matthew to put everything in front of that lion to try to kill it?
Pretty risky against certain cards like Dromoka's Command and other removal spells, so I don't mind the conservative approach. also good news for Erik here is if Matthew hung back with the hangerback walkers and was just pumping them, next turn Erik gets in the spot where if he wants to attack with the Fleece Main Lions to enable raid, he risks losing one of the Fleece Main Lions in combat against hangerback walker. Not something you want to do. If Matthew's currently focusing on chump blocking with hangerback walkers to get some 1-1s in play and protect his life total, that means it won't be hard for Erik to raid the wingmate rock. It won't come at much of a cost, and that's very good news.
Wow, and this way from Matthew, he's not hanging back to chump. He's actually going to race with his Haste Dragons. Swung for 2 with Thopters, self-inflicted wounded away one of the Fleece Main Lions, and now is leaving back a hanger back. So go to Erik's side, he attacks with Fleece Main. Matthew, not going to try to kill him, he's just going to go ahead and chump again, getting 2 Thopters.
Yeah, Matthew is committed to racing here alongside the Stormbreath Dragons, and that makes this Wingmate Rock really bad news for Matthew.
All right, so here's Wingmate Rock rated from Erik Smith. So it's a Wingmate Rock, it's a bird, it's a Fleece Main against 4 Thopters. Now here's the pressure. Does Erik have a 5th land that's untapped? We know he has some temples.
But he probably has to leave Stormbreath on defense right now.
Yeah, I mean, no, he has 2, so once he gets the second one can go on offense.
Well, the problem is, let's say you go, all right, I'll go ahead and I'll play Stormbreath and attack Erik down to 11.
Right.
He's got a Wingmate Rock and a token and a Fleece Main Line. He gains 3 on the way back just from the attack.
So even if he loses the Wingmate Rock, that still might be fine.
Right.
And certainly if Matthew doesn't have the untapped land for Stormbreath, this is a world of trouble.
And if your plan is play Stormbreath, attack you, quadruple block your Wingmate Rock, next turn to try to get it off the table, Stormbreath you again, you're beat by a lot of cards. Any removal spell that can touch the Stormbreath Dragon, really any removal spell that can kill a Thopter when you go for your quadruple block, Matthew may not have enough resources left to win the game.
And it looks like he does have it. 5th land is a basic mountain. So Matthew's going to be able to make his plays on curve. 2 dragons in are waiting. Here's the first one. Is it going to be on offense or defense? That's the decision for Matthew, and it's a big one.
Yeah. I think in Matthew's spot, I would be inclined to hang back.
And we'll see what he picks. Remember, he does have another one in his hand next turn. And it's going to attack. Erik's down to 9. But you're right, that's not many inroads of damage. He gains 3 on the way back.
The play that Matthew made is the best if Erik has nothing. But Erik has something.
And something indeed. It's Bioblade to take care of all the Thopters. Erik crashes in for 9. Matthew's down to 5. Erik gains 3. He's up to 12. And a horrible turn of events for Matthew Long.
Right. I mean, that Bioblight would have been pretty bad for Matthew regardless.
Yeah, he would have still gotten the Stormbreath even the other way.
Yeah.
And face down card for Erik Smith is Den Protector. Does this mean even if Matthew plays a second Stormbreath,
he's dead on the way?
Yeah.
Matthew's dead on the way back here. He can't kill Erik this turn, and 2 blockers against Erik's 4 threats. Matthew can't stay alive.
Yeah, 5 damage will get pushed through even with the 2 smallest creatures. And that board presence mattering so much here. The fact that Erik was able to get that rated Wingmate Rock instead of just a regular one.
So, Matthew has to decide what kind of cards he's going to play around in this game. In the initial blocks with the Fleece Main Lion, they were very mana efficient from Matthew's perspective, and they made sure that Abzan Charm couldn't touch the Hangerback Walkers. But his line of play left him pretty exposed to Wingmate Rock because he never made Erik suicide one of his Fleece Main Lions and he never lost one of them in combat, and Erik got to curve very efficiently into a rated Wingmate Rock.
Yeah, and I think what Matthew was counting on here was the fact that his double 5-drop, his 2 Stormbreath Dragons, would outclass Erik's 5-drop. Stormbreath's great in this matchup. That said, it didn't play out that way.
Exactly, and I think Matthew's line of play that game was reasonable. He used his mana every single turn. He built up a pretty good board. He had a couple Stormbreath Dragons left over. It looked like he was in a good position to race, either just attacking in the air or chump blocking and managing combat that way. But he couldn't handle Wingmate Rock the way that he played that game. Erik had it and had gas left over after the Wingmate Rock, and Matthew just crumbled in the face of that card.
And we're going to be going back to game 3. Erik Smith has evened things out. Remember, a win will put Erik Smith as our first player into the top 8 of the Invitational here. For Matthew Long, He'll need to win this round and need to take one of the remaining 2 rounds if he wants the top 8 spot.
Erik's got a little bit of wiggle room here, but of course you'd rather lock it up sooner rather than later.
Get ready. And it looks like maybe some re-sideboarding on Erik's side here.
Well, I think play versus draw in this matchup matters a lot. Erik's got to be able to interact a little bit faster, needs to be, probably less focus on the top end, more focus on this preserving his life total. From Matthew's side, I think something like Goblin Rabblemaster, Anger of the Gods, that could be a play-draw sort of swap. You want Rabblemaster when you're the aggressor and Anger when you're on defense. So I think both these players can do a lot of sideboarding based on whether they're on the play or the draw.
All right, these players get ready for the Invitational. Remember, this is the end of the 3rd season. That's our Summer Invitational. And we have our Summer 2015 Creature Collection. You've been seeing these on pins and on playmats. We have our Game Night creatures. That's the Monkey, the Kraken, and the Piglet. Also, from our parody series, we have Deathrite Salmon. We can see all of these on playmats, sleeves, and bundles. They're available for purchase at starcitygames.com/creature collection.
Also, you can head over to our dealer booth at any of our opens. Any Grand Prix that we're at, we have the stuff on site as well.
So 1 game apiece between Matthew Long and Erik Smith. First game, we saw Matthew lose board control, but win life total control. Game 2 was different. It looked like Matthew was trying to control the board, but really wasn't able to do it, and eventually got outraced.
Well, he had to pick his path, and I think that the path that he picked was really, really good against Abzan Charm because he was making sure that Erik was never going to be able to exile a Hangerback Walker, and then Matthew was leaning on Stormbreath Dragon to carry the day after the fact, and you can't kill Stormbreath Dragon with Abzan Charm because of protection from white. But Wingmate Rock was a big vulnerability in the line of play that he selected, basically from turn 3 on. He could have set up the Hangerback Walkers to be 3/3s, so when Erik goes to make his attack to enable raid, some of the Fleecemane Lions are dying as a result, or he has to go monstrous with one of them, set himself a full turn back on being able to raid the Wingmate Rock. As it stood, Erik got to curve very efficiently and never had to put his Fleecemane Lions at any sort of risk.
Yeah, if Erik really wanted to raid the Wingmate Rock, that was going to happen. Matthew, with the other line, Erik has to pay a much bigger tax for it. He'd lose all his Fleecemane Lions to get that 3/4.
Right, and then you have Stormbreath Dragon against Wingmate Rock and all of your Thopters, and it's not clear Wingmate Rock is good enough to win the game. I'm not saying this to say that Matthew necessarily messed up because he's got to pick cards to beat and cards to lose to. But the way that it lined up there, his choices worked out very well for Erik.
Yeah, I mean, if you go the other way and Matthew pumps there and Erik has Abzan Charms, it could
looks
be a
horrible.
disaster.
It looks horrible, right? And, if his hand's like Abzan Charm and Ultimate Price for Stormbreath Dragon, and you could have just made a bunch of Thopters and raced that way, it looks bad the other direction. That's why I'm saying it's not clear that it's a mistake, because one line of play leaves Matthew very vulnerable to a certain class of cards. The other line of play lets him vulnerable to Wingmate Rock. Not even clear if Erik has Wingmate Rock in the 75. He certainly has copies of Abzan Charm, probably has copies of Ultimate Price. So from a statistics standpoint, it's a reasonable selection of cards to beat and lose to, but just didn't work out well for him.
Well, game 3, Matthew will be back on the play. See if he can get see if he'll go for that aggressive strategy again. Last time, game 1, giving up card economy for damage. Game 2, he was on the back side of it. He was giving up card economy to prevent damage for a while.
Yep. I like Matthew siding into a much more aggressive deck when he's on the play. Something like Goblin Rabblemaster, when Erik doesn't have a lot, he doesn't have that many 2-mana plays, and he also has draws where just a lot of lands come to play tapped. On the draw, I think it's trivial for Erik to be able to block and contain a Rabblemaster. On the play, I think the card gets a lot better for Matthew, and I would want to take that kind of angle. More about Draconic Roars, self-inflicted wounds, Thunderbreak Regents, get some damage here, get some damage there, even if Erik can answer your threats, and hope to close out the game that way, sort of like what he did in game 1.
All right, 2-land start from Matthew, no 2-drop. Looks like he has gone with a bigger plan, has a fair amount of removal in hand, as well as cards like, I believe, Chandra Pyromaster in his hand.
Yep. 1 copy in the main deck, 2 copies of Outpost Siege. I don't like Outpost Siege post-board in this matchup because of Dramoka's command, but Chandra's okay.
Here's Hangerback Walker from Erik. That'll do a great job of playing around cards like Self-Inflicted Wound. But Draconic Roar will take it down as Matthew shows the Thunderbreak Regent.
Just got to cast stuff on time here, and like we've mentioned, Matthew's plan is a lot about get some points here, get some points there, and make it so even if Erik's able to trade, Matthew's getting some damage along the way.
And what Matthew does need is a third land. Last turn he played the Haven, I don't believe he had land 3. Here it's going to be land 3. It comes into play tapped, though, as it's Bloodfell Caves. That will delay Matthew a turn. His only 2-mana play is Self-Inflicted Wound, which doesn't play on this board.
Right. Would have been a lot better here for Matthew if Erik played Fleece Mainline on 2 instead of that Hangerback Walker.
So we go back to Erik. He'll continue a hit with the Thopter. That'll drop Matthew down to 21. And he'll Thoughtseize. And this kind of plays into Matthew's strategy. It's a trade that costs Erik some life. Thoughtseize isn't the worst.
Well, you know, Matthew's very vulnerable now to not drawing a 4th land. You can see his hand besides the Rabblemaster. It's a removal spell and 4-mana play. So this is a hand that can go south really easily for Matthew if he doesn't draw a 4th land real fast.
Matthew's hand, Self-Inflicted Wound, Goblin Rabblemaster, 2 Thunderbreak Regents, and 1 Chandra Pyromaster. You're absolutely right. It does seem like Erik has to go for the Rabblemaster here. But if Matthew hits the 4th land this turn, I do like his hand quite a bit.
Absolutely. I mean, you can see, I like the logic here from Erik. He's going to take the Self-Inflicted Wound, cast Fleece Mainline. Now the Rabblemaster is worth very little, and if Matthew does not draw a land that comes into play untapped, he's in trouble.
And he doesn't. His draw for the turn was Draconic Roar.
Which is not bad. If it's not going to be land number 4, that's about as good as it's going to get. It allows him to trade with the Fleece Main Lion, and again, he gets a couple of points of damage for his trouble. That knocks Erik down to 10. And Matthew hasn't done very much here.
No, this is all incidental damage. I mean, if he does it, it's 6 damage off Draconic Roars, 2 damage off a Thoughtseize.
A Windswept Heath or 2 Windswept Heath's in the equation.
Yeah, 2 of them. So here's Draconic Roar showing the same Thunderbreak. Means Erik still has perfect information on Matthew's hand, but he's at 10, halfway. Half the damage has been done without a creature.
Yeah.
Hangerback, the Thopter swings in. Now the danger here is with Matthew missing lands, if Erik plays a 4th land and starts casting things like Siege Rhino, things go south for Matthew.
Yeah, it looks like Erik's missing land number 3, and I think it's just who gets to land 4 first is going to have a huge edge in this game.
Den Protector face down as Erik's plays. We go back to Matthew. I don't believe he hit land 4. His Rabblemaster looks better on this board. Not great.
It's okay. You know, it's certainly better than casting nothing.
Yep. Plays Rabblemaster, no land. Erik will take the free block. Morph blocks the 1/1. So we go back over to Erik Smith. Did he hit land 4? The answer to that is also no.
Because when Matthew hits land number 4, he gets some plays like Thunderbreak Regent. He can go Chandra, plus it, shoot your Thopter down. That's another point of damage. Requires a response from Erik because he's got to kill Chandra pretty fast. If Erik gets to land number 4 first, he's ripping off Siege Rhinos while Matthew's kind of fumbling around.
Erik's play is going to be Den Protector, flipping, getting back a land. Look at the premium Erik's putting on land 4 here. He gets Windswept Heath.
Beautiful turn here for Erik because he also has ultimate price left over. You can use it to kill the Rabblemaster.
Yep. Now, let's not sell it short. There's some more incidental damage. This is the 3rd fetch land he's cracked. Erik down to 9.
But he's going to get it all back next turn with the Siege Rhino. Now I think it is critical for Matthew to have the 4th land. For a while here, he had some room to breathe. Now it just has to be here.
Well, it's not ultimate price. It's another Fleece Main line from Erik. Matthew does draw land 4, but it comes into play tapped. He does have a play this turn in Hangerback Walker, but it's an unimpressive one.
Yep. Draconic Roar would have also been great this turn, but Matthew did not find another copy.
Goblin Token probably will suicide into the cat.
I think he's got to attack with the Rabblemaster also.
Yeah, we'll see if he makes the play. I mean, and I think he's going to. Here's the swing. So maybe the token won't suicide. Erik might have to take the trade. He doesn't. He takes the free block on the Goblin, but it costs him. He goes down to 6.
Yeah, I mean, Erik is playing basically hand up on the other side of the table. All he didn't know about was that one draw step, which he now knows, which is Hangerback Walker. So if he's going to untap and play a Siege Rhino, he knows that Matthew's hand can't kill a Siege Rhino. So he's not worried about the Rabblemaster untapping and getting to attack again.
I mean, if Erik has Siege Rhinos here, I think he knows he'll win this race.
Yep.
So here's a swing from Erik. 4 damage through, a chump block by Hangerback Walker. And of course, Siege Rhino puts Erik back up to 9. Matthew takes 4 and 3 more. He's down to 9 as well. Things are going to be tied up.
And even Matthew's best draws, even if he had something like Roast, let's say, Erik knows that's Matthew's whole turn because the rest of Matthew's hand is just 4-mana stuff. Erik knows he can beat Thunderbreak Regent, and he can probably beat any other spell that represents Matthew's entire turn. And there's no real way for Matthew to put together 2 spells in 1 turn, which is what he really needs.
It'll be hard for Matthew to go pound for pound with Siege Rhino. If they're just going to trade 4-drops, I mean, this is the strength of Siege Rhino. He's better than every other 4-drop.
The one path that Matthew has, he needs to draw his copy of Murderous Cut. Murderous Cut gives him a hope of being able to make a substantial play on the board. And also remove Erik's best threat. There's only 1 in the list. He's got 1 in the sideboard, but now in the position that he's in, even if he's able to survive Erik's next turn, which is no guarantee, I think that's got to be the draw step.
I mean, you're right. He needs to do 2 spells in a turn. Murderous Cut's the way to do it. But even then, this incidental damage from the Siege Rhino enter the battlefield ability may be too much to overcome.
The other option that Matthew may have, don't know if it's in the deck, he does have 1 copy of Crux of Fate. Crux of Fate can also clean up this board. So he's drawing to a couple sideboard cards that may give him some hope, but it's next turn or bust. That assumes he gets out of Erik's next attack step, which is no guarantee of if Erik has a hand with a couple removal spells in it.
Thunderbreak Regent was the cast by Matthew. Rabblemaster makes a token. It's going to have to attack just by itself. Rhino will block. And we're back to Erik Smith. Life totals are 9 apiece. Heady. It was a race to that 4th land. Neither player actually hit it on time for Erik. He ended up having to den protect it.
He worked for it. But that is a tool that Erik's deck has that Matthew's does not.
And now, Matthew hopes to survive to next turn without taking too much damage. Certainly if there's another Rhino, it's bad news. But this may be worse. It's Sorin Solemn Visitor. He'll plus to give his entire team lifelink and swing everything.
Right. The only thing that Erik was really concerned about leading up until this point was, can Matthew somehow cobble together enough burn in some weird backdoor way to burn me out of the game?
Yeah, and that's just not happening anymore.
Not anymore. Matthew has to tender a lot of chump blocks here just to survive. Erik's going to gain a ton of life, leave most of his board intact, still got 3 cards in his hand. And we know Matthew's leftovers at this point, Thunderbreak Regent and Chandra, not much of a help here.
So Thopters will trade. Thunderbreak will trade with Den Protector. Rabblemaster will die to Fleecemane Lion. Siege Rhino will crash in for 5. Matthew will end at 4. Erik will be over 20. Matthew will have no board.
Right.
And we may just have our first spot in the top 8 locked up here. Erik Smith running away from the field. Already had sole possession of first place. Can he make that gap even wider? It looks like yes. And that's the play. So, Den Protector and Thopter die. All of Matthew's creatures are gone. Matthew goes down to 4. Erik 24. And there you have it. Match for Erik Smith. His Abzan aggro deck picks up another win here, and at 13-1, he is in our top 8.
Congratulations, Erik Smith, with an opportunity now to become a 2-time New Jersey Invitational champion. Even better for him, 13-1, got some room to play with, could still lock up the top overall seed. Play draw in the top 8 determined by seeding, so being on the play, especially in a format as fast as Legacy, that's a huge boon. So Erik still got something to play for here. He wants to be the highest seed possible, but for now it appears he is the first person to lock up a slot in the top 8.
You're absolutely right. One more win should be enough to get him the top seed. 13-1, an impressive performance from him. 7-1 in Legacy, currently 6-0 in Standard with Abzan aggro.
Yeah, very, very, very nicely done.